Welcome to the Narrative Factor podcast, holding stories with courage, curiosity, and kindness. This is a space for real conversations with our authors and guests, where we practice listening longer, disagreeing respectfully, and choosing dignity over division. Here, you'll find nuance over noise, hope over hype, and the reminder that stories held well can heal people, cities, and systems. I'm Leoni Vee, and this is the Narrative Factor. Let's begin. Good morning, everyone. This is the Narrative Factor, and I am so excited about today. I am absolutely over the moon, André, to have you in this room, albeit thousands of miles away. This feels like this project has been years. From the moment that I met you, to where we are now, to a completed
Absolutely.
book, to a completed book that we're waving in the air and we're going, woohoo, we finally did it. You, of course, did the hard work of actually getting a PhD off the ground. So I'm really excited about this. So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dr. Dre.
Yeah, we'll go with that until we get a cease and desist.
I couldn't resist that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's own it.
So, Andre, I'm absolutely just gonna sit here. And I think let's just do what we usually do, is kind of shoot from the hip. I did not plan anything. Okay,
all right.
I lie, I did, but I don't want to use it because I kind of want us to just flow, and I really just want people to get a sense, firstly, of who you are. And I think for me, the important thing is that for our listeners today, if you could just, fill in a little bit about who Dr. Dre is, and how you got to the place of saying, hey, I want to spend 7 years of my life to complete a PhD. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't originally think it was going to take 7 years. It was going to take 3 to start with. So, but that's always the way life has its twists and turns. I've been passionate about community development and exploring the potentials of community, I think, right from very early on. Um, Even before finishing school, one of my key desires was to be a doctor. That was a medical doctor, but of course, twists and turns, and came out with a PhD instead, but still get to do the Dr. Dre, so that's pretty cool. Um, but even back then in school, there was a desire to, in inverted commas, help others, and I had a friend from school who pointed that out to me a number of years later when I'd been involved in community development and youth work and youth accommodation and having all kinds of young people live with us, amazing young people, amazing resilience, and so many skills and abilities. And I know my partner Amy and I learnt so much from having them live with us over the years. And then running an organization that was embedded locally and was became some of the lifeblood of a community in Melbourne, to the extent that the local council would refer people to us. If anyone had wanted to know anything about youth work or homelessness in the region, they said, get in touch with these guys. So we were just a part of the community, and it was a real privilege to be able to serve the community and provide spaces for connections to grow. And I was involved also in shaping networks of social services and growing and gaining an understanding of what needs looked like in communities and what some of the responses from big organizations were to those needs, and some of the inadequacies and some of the things that just, you look at and go, why did anyone ever think that that was going to work? and lots of learnings along the way, and lots of amazing people who were living and working in really difficult systems. So you could see that these incredible people at the local council and in some of the social services, and then later in my work in the aid and development world, had amazing hearts and amazing desires to make a difference, but they were stuck in mindsets and stuck in systems that disabled their approaches and meant that they couldn't be as effective as they really would have loved to have been. And so from there, I really began asking myself the question of what do we want to develop our communities towards? Surely what we're doing is not getting us close enough. And for me, that sent me on that PhD journey. It sent me on what became a 7-year journey, really over a decade of traveling around the world, exploring communities, exploring what was working, what wasn't working, hearing heartbreaking stories of interventions that had been tried and failed, and that had actually left communities worse off than before they
Yeah.
came. And these were the things that were sort of breaking my heart. And I knew that I had some clues, and I followed those clues, and I did the research, and I did the work, and I've come up with something that I think can make a difference. And in fact, we've tested it around the world. We know it makes a difference.
Yes. Yes, indeed. I have had the honor of sitting in a room while you're presenting your PhD in Switzerland, in some
Mm, mm.
UN meeting, and
Yep,
that was
yep,
absolutely astonishing. The interest. I'm always amazed at how people show up to that conversation. And people like go, oh wow, I really would like to know more. And this
mm,
is like an
mm,
amazing take. So let's actually
yeah,
dive straight in to
mm,
just and I don't want you to sort of give too much away because we want people to buy your book so that we can
of
actually start a movement. I'm hoping that this
Yeah.
starts a movement. So
Mm.
just touch on the concept of the flourishing framework.
Yeah, look, it's a fascinating journey to come to the flourishing framework. So I've traveled a journey of exploring faith over many years, and one of the things that came out of my exploration of faith was this Hebraic term shalom. And most people think it means peace and have, looked at it as the absence of war in a way. But as I did the deep dive into the concept of shalom, I recognized its richness and its recognition of our interconnection as people, and the fact that we are not islands and we are not disconnected from other people and from the world around us, but in fact, we are intrinsically linked. And that means that what I do matters, and how I show up actually makes a difference in the world, if you like, a ripple effect. One of the best ways that I've heard to sort of describe the depth of shalom, if you like, is this story from the ancient Near East. And it's in the book, but just a short version is you have someone, a stranger, coming into an ancient Near East town
Yeah.
at the end of the day, and everyone's sitting around and they're just relaxing after the day's work, sharing story. And this was the sort of the normal thing that would happen in these villages. As this stranger rides into town, someone immediately jumps up and goes over to them and welcomes them to the town and invites them and says, it's our end of day and it's going to be getting dark soon. And so it's time that everyone's thinking about dinner and sleeping and that sort of thing. You must come. You must come and stay with us, and
Mm.
we will look after you and look after your horse and all of those sorts of things. So the moment then that the stranger crosses the threshold of the door of the townsperson,
Yes.
um, their shalom in that household is affected by the shalom of the stranger. So if the shalom of the stranger is not complete, then their shalom or their experience of peace or well-being or
Wow.
whatever language you want to put around it is incomplete. And to me, that just blew me away. Coming from a Western perspective, lived my life in Australia, and recognizing that, hey, hang on, there's another reality there. There's
Mm.
a depth of connection. And that actually calls me out to something, that actually invites me
Yeah.
on a journey of how do we work together for our common well-being, our common
Yes.
shalom, or in the language that we've used in the book, our common flourishing.
Yes. You and I've had this conversation from the first moment we met. And I grew up very much in a third world environment, and community is extremely important.
Mm,
Where we come from, and it was almost like you and I sort of the first time we met, and I said to you, "Hey, have you come across the word Ubuntu?" And
mm,
that was pretty much along the same, like my piece is complete, so I am because you are.
yep, yep.
And my well-being is directly tied to yours.
Mm,
And it's such a deep thread that runs through people who focus on community. And you see that a lot in African communities where,
mm,
especially in townships where people end up um, mothers would die of AIDS, and the neighbors would take on the role of mother, right?
mm, mm.
So and
Absolutely.
that is just we so miss that incredible nuance. I think in Western society, and this big book for me almost like forces that nuance back into how we live. And what I absolutely love is that this book doesn't, you don't basically go, I'm expecting everybody to be an expert in cities,
Mm,
right?
mm, mm.
You're just asking us to notice what's happening right in front of us. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna just let you have the floor there. So
Absolutely. Look, one of the things I love inviting my students to do is to kind of take a stock take of their neighborhood, to find a quiet spot, a safe spot, and to sit down for 10, 20 minutes, concentrate on being present in your surroundings, because so often we're not present in our surroundings, right? We're thinking about, the past, or thinking about what's coming up, and, thinking about what we're going to have for dinner, or that person at work that was really annoying me, or, these sorts of things. But actually stop and to be present in the neighborhood, and to watch the rhythms of the street. Who's walking past? What are they smiling at? What are they frowning at? What are they getting stressed about? What's happening in the shops? And to just become aware. And there's some incredible gifts that come when you take the time to be aware and to see what's going on. You do notice sadness, and you notice causes for lament, but you can also notice opportunities of joy. And these beautiful moments where you see a parent and a child interacting, where mum's explaining something, or dad's having a joke with the kids, or
yeah,
that kind of thing. It can lift us and bring us incredible joy, but it also invites us to think about the rhythms of the city. So what's going on in those people's lives? What's going on beyond the surface? And for me, there's a great deal of, I think, calmness and connectedness when I'm in that space, and I'm just watching, and not to be creepy, but just to recognize and just to see what is going on, and look at those events as an indication of what's happening in the life of the community or the life of the city. And
mm,
for me, that's such an important starting point
yeah.
for all of us, because we then see the things that our heart wants us to pay attention to.
And that's actually so important because I think that so many of us know that something's wrong in the way we live, right? But we don't always
Mm,
know how to name it. And I
mm,
really feel that this book gives language um, to uh, um, to actually structure almost how we look at where we live, and
mm,
how to
mm,
get involved, because it's the kind of language that invites into community. And let's face it, Westerners don't have the language. The way we
mm,
live in
mm,
our individual societies, we just don't have the language, right? So I feel that this
that's right.
book is
Mm.
such an important work for this
Mm.
time, because I feel that this work is something that actually invites people into and gives language to. So how do we actually look at our communities?
Absolutely. I think yeah, so many different directions that could go in that. There's so many thoughts running through my head. One of the things that struck out for me as I was putting the framework together was this idea of purpose, and so often we think of purpose in the Tony Robbins kind of way. I've got to go out and make something happen, or I've got to be the best at something, or
Yeah.
and it feels like you kind of sort of geeing yourself up, raring yourself into a state.
Mm,
Others would say, oh, if you don't find your one thing, then you've missed it, and all of that sort of stuff. Well, as I looked at this Hebraic concept, I thought that doesn't seem to be what it's teaching us about purpose, which is one of the elements of the flourishing framework.
mm, mm,
And for me, it pushed me to think about, okay, if that's not what purpose is about, where are we going? Where does it come from? And I realized in conversation with a few people, my partner included, is that it actually comes about from our deepest held values,
mm,
the things that, as we strip it all away, that are that are really, really important for us, those motivators that sit behind the actions that we do, not the surface things, but the really deep things. So one of the illustrations, I give towards that is thinking about the guy who's running the local um, fruit and veg shop, for example.
yeah.
And you could look at him and think, well, his purpose is running the shop. But if you had a conversation with him, you'd realize that his dream, his desire is actually to bring healthy food into the community. He
Yeah.
recognized that there was a bit of a food desert, or that the quality of the fruit and veg that was coming wasn't good enough. So he actually wanted to provide good quality, fresh food,
Mm,
and fresh fruit and veggies. And he knew that the best way he could do that was by running a shop.
yeah.
So the shop is an expression of that deeply held value.
Yeah.
And that deeply held value is that link to purpose.
My goodness, how awesome is that? In terms of having the ultimate purpose, right, is to feed people, right?
Mm,
And to feed
mm,
people,
mm,
and add value in terms
mm.
of like feeding people, but also going, you know what, this matters to me. What goes
Yeah.
into other people's bodies matter to me. Whereas our
Yes.
Western
Yep.
society has almost hijacked um, our diets, right? We are
Oh,
more,
absolutely.
we are
Yeah, yeah.
more unhealthy than what we have ever been in the history of the world, almost,
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
because of the way we are nourished is linked to money, and once again, our purpose
Yes. Yeah.
is
Yeah, I was
constantly
going to say, I
linked.
think yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Go.
Sorry. I think what sits behind that is this rate of consumption, right? And this sort of consumerism. And, it might not be, borne out in what we buy at the supermarkets, or it could be. But I think it's a product of this desire that we have to keep purchasing, to keep getting the new thing, and we think that that's kind of going to fulfill a purpose or fulfill some hole in our lives. But yet it's kind of just fills it for a moment, fills the void for a moment, and then we're left longing and waiting for the next thing. And I think what flourishing does is we focus on those elements is that it helps us realize that there's more to life than us. There's more to life than simply, working to earn money to buy things. That kind of circular way of living, ultimately doesn't scratch the itches that we have for a fulfilled life.
No.
Uh, and flourishing invites us to live to the full. So it recognizes that, yeah, we need to eat and we need drink and we need shelter and that sort of thing, and we need those provided at a not just a survival level but a beyond survival level. But that's only one aspect of life, and that together with things like belonging and contribution and purpose, those are the things that create a more fuller expression of who we are as humans.
Yeah, that actually brings me to the thing that was the sense of like working through this book over the last couple of months. And it was, you're not romanticizing poverty, but you're also
Mm,
refusing to treat people as empty and worthless.
mm.
And that this is inevitably where our system lands. Inevitably, the welfare state lands at that place of helping and making people just receivers, as
Yeah,
opposed to
yeah.
participants. So I'd like you to actually talk about that, because that to me is almost one of the most important things, and it's the stuff that makes this book so deeply human. Um,
I I first had this raised strongly to my attention by hearing the words of Noel Pearson. Noel's an Indigenous activist from Cape York, up the top of Australia. I really apologise. I can't remember the Indigenous name for the land. Uh, But uh, it, but Noel Pearson would say that the welfare state and benefits and those sorts of things was never meant to be a permanent address. And what we've seen in Australia, particularly in the welfare system and overseas in the aid and development space, is that the giving and the receiving dynamic has been seen as permanent. And so we have people who could technically be on a benefit from birth to death. Now, as I say that, I'm very conscious that some people can hear that as anti-welfare, and
mm,
I'm not anti-welfare. I recognize that there are times
no,
in people's lives where the wheels fall off and people need support.
yeah,
But the problem is when you see the same people turning up for the same help 5, 10, 15 years in a row
yeah,
at the local food bank, you do have to ask, are we actually helping anyone? Or are we
very good,
entrenching people
very
in
good,
poverty?
yes, very good,
And
yeah,
so I then started questioning the way that welfare is done, the way that our helping, if you like, is done, and began to realize that what Noel Pearson said was absolutely right. That if you don't expect something back from people, then people will rise to the standard that you set, right? So if you don't expect anything back, if you continue to send the message that you don't have anything to bring, as you said, that you're empty vessels,
mm,
then people those words will actually create the
mm,
way that people think about themselves. And there is messaging that people have taken deep into their psyche, generational messaging,
yes.
both in Australia and overseas, that have led them to believe that they have nothing, that they are poor, that they are needy, and that that's all they have.
Oh my word.
And to me, that's devastating.
That is indeed
Um,
devastating. It's absolutely
yeah,
devastating. And we don't actually take into account that how we view people and what we say about them really do matter. That
absolutely.
we and what I love about your book is like the invitation is, come on, we've got to think differently about this. And We actually sort of also look at the toxic help cycles. I think this also
Mm,
ties in very much to the toxic help cycles, and I'd like you to sort of just touch on that. You go quite in depth in that in the book, but I'd like you
mm.
to kind of just bring that in a little bit.
Sure, sure. Look, I started traveling overseas, and I started with South Africa and Zambia, Kenya, and then into other places like Pakistan and Philippines, and I began seeing a cycle, particularly when I was invited to go and visit some of the informal settlements or slums. And I began seeing all of these sorts of well-meaning projects sitting by the side of the road, whether they were sanitation or building products, or I'd hear stories of learning initiatives and all of these things that would come into communities by big NGOs, big funders, big government, and they'd run for a while and then stop. Either the
Mm-hmm.
money would run out or the organization would change priority. And the hope always was, of course, that the community would go on and keep running the program or doing this or that or whatever. But inevitably, it was just left there. Now, you could take that and go, oh, well, people are a bit hopeless and they just need their hand held and all that sort of thing. It's one way that you could take that. And sadly, I think a lot of the welfare agencies and NGOs, that's kind of the opinion that they take. And so they go away, design the next program and kind of come back. But what I was seeing was, as I walked around these communities, I saw people with agency, with skill, I think I told you, Leonie, and you probably know that Kibera is one of the largest informal settlements in Africa, and it sits in Nairobi in Kenya,
Yeah.
right in the middle of the city. And the word on the street is that people will drive from all over Nairobi to come and have their car repaired in Kibera because they know that the mechanics in Kibera can fix anything.
Oh
And that's
wow.
the rep on the street, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
suddenly you have this informal settlement of what others would see as a blight on the community, actually
Yes.
being the ones that fix the cars for the city, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So hang on, why are we saying to these people that they don't have any agency, that they don't have any skill, that they somehow need us to move towards this magical kind of standard, which we'll talk about in a minute?
Yes.
Um, but I and
Mm,
I was just left thinking, but hang on, these
yeah.
people in their city have the reputation of being the ones to fix it.
Yes.
So hang on, there's a disconnect here. Something's
Yes.
something's not right. And
Yes.
we've somehow in the West created these industries that now need to be sustained, now need to be, kind of kept going. And so we keep telling ourselves the lie that these people need our help.
Yes. Yeah. The Kibera story really challenges the way we measure communities. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I really that sort of working through that, and I've seen it, you know, also being raised in Africa.
Of
Um,
course.
so I would take my own car
Hmm.
in various times in living in Cape Town to the local informal settlement
Yep.
because I knew that I was going to have it done cost effectively and then it would be
Yep.
a good job.
Hmm.
Um, and those
Yep.
guys, and I also knew that that was actually creating currency in a community
Yeah.
that desperately needed to have
Yep.
agency and currency to
Yep.
to
Yep.
decide what they want to do with their own lives. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
having said that, I've also having come from the um, sort of NGO sphere myself,
Mm.
seen how people come in with lots of money and build
Mm.
a rugby field in a place where all the children play soccer, right?
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Or
Hmm.
insist on a whole bunch of equipment for cricket when none of those kids even care about cricket.
Yeah.
Only
That's
thing
right. That's
you
right.
know. So, yeah, I'd like you to just go
So
that one for a bit. Yeah.
what we're highlighting here is the fact that these communities have a lot. They have agency, they have ability, they have perspectives, they have desires, the way they'd like to see life, and that sort of thing. And a lot come with a dream because they move from the rural areas into the cities.
Yeah.
And they inevitably do end up in the informal settlements where they're told that they don't have any skills and those sorts of things. But what you and I have just been describing is actually the opposite, that there is a lot of agency, there
Mm.
are a lot of skills. And look, yeah, it doesn't deny the problem. Sure, there are problems in community. Anywhere in the world, you pick any community,
Yes.
there's problems, there's issues. But it is important which lens you look through, because in these places, if you look through the negative lens, then you are always going to have this response of providing help and aid and all of those sorts of things.
Yes.
However, we flip the narrative and we look at what is already strong here. What are the things that are already working? And how do we build on that? How do we help people reorder the way that they see themselves so that they can believe in themselves and believe that they have the ability to move towards the future, not only as individuals, because that's not the way it works in places like Kibera, but
Yes. As a community. Yes.
as a community towards the
Yes.
future that they want. And in fact, when we then translate that into the West, we're a little bit behind the eight ball because we've got to learn about what it means to be in community and then relearn what it
Oh,
is that we can actually do together to
yes.
see ourselves and our communities flourish. So I
And
actually think we're a bit more further behind than those
yes,
communities
I
in
also
Africa
think
and in
so. I
Asia.
think that our Western individualism has actually put us behind.
Yep.
We've lost a part of our humanity that was actually killed by individualism.
Australia, authors like Hugh Mackay have been picking this up for generations, right?
Yes.
So there's people that have been, kind of trying to send that clarion call, have been trying to, sort of
Mm,
help us in the West.
yes.
Malcolm Gladwell and
Oh
Putnam
yeah.
and,
Oh
those
yeah.
guys in the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
US.
Mm,
And they've been trying to help us recognize our need of community. But we seem to get
yes.
so intoxicated by this model of capitalism that we're in, and
Yeah.
this model of
And
having everything for ourselves.
let's actually just make that clear just before anybody has a conniption. We are not anti-capitalism, okay, but we also think that there is a good balance to be found.
Mm, mm. So I think
That,
what
that
we've
that
seen
that
in
doesn't
modern,
just that
mm,
doesn't put
yeah,
the dollar over humanity.
yeah, yeah. See that,
Yeah,
and that's exactly what's happened
yeah,
in modern capitalism. The dollar has been first. So if
yes,
you listen to the statistics and listen to the news and what makes a healthy city, it's
yes,
all driven by the GDP, it's driven by the economy and those sorts of things. And what I'm advocating for is that the economy finds its rightful place in the ordering of flourishing. So yep, sure, we need money, we need some way of trading, we need these things,
yes,
but it's not the one that rules us. Currently, it is. But if we want to flourish, then it is a servant of this process of flourishing.
yes.
And that's the perspective that we've lost.
Indeed, I absolutely love the line that stayed with me in the book is the idea of holding up a mirror to communities so that they can see their own strengths. Because once you
Mm,
can get a community to believe in themselves, they can create their own economy that
mm,
very often stands stronger than the economy of the country. You see,
mm,
and
mm,
because we continuously have, we've almost like outsourced um, um, our entire economy, and we've relied on politicians to make decisions for us. And
mm.
politicians, unfortunately, do not make decisions where humanity and our communities are put first.
Exactly right. And there is a movement which is quite exciting. It's called hyperlocalism. And there's lots of examples of what you're talking about, Leonie, of microeconomies, microjournalism, those sorts of things. And that's not to become introspective, but actually recognizing the strengths of local community and that whole sort of buy local campaign and those sorts of things, and actually seeing communities
Mm.
being in a better position to look after themselves. And I think, and cities can take on this kind of attitude. And I think whilst we need to recognize that we're part of systems, we're part of the global system, national systems, these kinds of things, but that there are things that we can do at a local level that
Yes,
will actually make life a lot more livable for
yes.
each other and for ourselves.
And the interesting thing is that these things have been tried and tested. I actually think of Cormac Russell's book on communities,
Mm,
where he actually uses exactly that example of an area that was crime ridden, that was really sort of poor, and how those people
mm,
banded together and created.
yep.
I think Ash has also got a few of those kind of
Yeah, Ashbarker in
experience.
Birmingham.
Ash
Yeah,
Barker,
yeah,
yes, that's right.
yep,
And so
absolutely.
so out there in the world, we actually have these examples, right? We
Mm,
have the examples that these things, these ways and are working, but the
mm,
powers that be and the siloed approaches around the NPO and NGO spheres
yep,
does not allow for politicians to just come and sit with a community, for people that make the decisions to come and sit with communities
yeah,
and go,
yeah.
how do we make better policies that actually assist you in what you're doing, rather than actually passing policies that actually destroys what you're doing.
And
Okay,
this is one
just
of the foci of the book is we want to speak to policymakers as well as practitioners and citizen activists and academics.
yes.
When it comes to policymakers, it's exactly right. It's a human focus, humanity first.
Yeah.
And until we get that right, until we put humanity above our systems, above the economy,
Yes.
we're not going to reach flourishing on a macro level. See, what happened in Australia, like decades ago now, is there was lots of decisions that were made locally that were then actually referred to state and national bodies. And I'm thinking about what's happening in Indigenous communities around Australia.
Mm.
And suddenly, decisions that were affecting the community were made hundreds of kilometres away, with little to no understanding or engagement with
Mm.
those local communities. And
Yeah.
then we wonder why the gap in Australia has never closed.
Oh
The
yeah.
gap
I mean,
between you
and
know,
I
yeah,
actually do that, the gap report. I actually read that every single year it comes out, and it is
mm, mm,
horrendous. It
yep,
gets worse. It doesn't get better.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and and once again, I'm now actually going to bring the story in this week that really, 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 really got to me about
Mm,
how it's not working. Okay,
mm,
is when a little
mm,
girl gets murdered, and there is her aunt stands in Parliament and weeps and laments
mm,
over this, right? And the response, in general, is horrific. Is
mm,
horrific.
yeah.
We really need to get into what I think the invitation is. And if I had a politician watch this right now,
Mm,
I would say to them, before you make another policy, get out into the communities that you are making
mm,
policies about. Not
yeah.
as
Yeah.
a savior, but
Mm.
just go, tape your mouth shut and go and listen. Go and listen.
Yeah, I mean, it does almost feel, doesn't it, when you're talking with a politician that there's a bit of a sales pitch going on almost all the time. And I think that's, that's part of the landscape and it's part of what it means to, be in politics. But I think you're right. I think there comes a time where you just need to stop and listen. And for me, that's been sort of part of trying to get off the treadmill and to take life a little bit slower. And I think that that is something that helps us to flourish because we tap into those deeper sides of ourselves and the deeper parts of community. And it is that ability to just kind of be able to exhale a little bit and to
Yeah.
again be present and mindful with what's here and what's around us. And that gives us a different perspective. And yeah, our politicians and we all really need that perspective.
I think so. And I think what to me is the absolutely astonishing thing about this book is like the slow down, slow down, slow down, because flourishing is not about doing more. And
Mm,
that's
mm,
almost like a is it's almost like an absolute spiritual principle,
mm,
which is
mm.
one of the things that you look at in the framework.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
let's
Yeah.
touch on that because
Yeah.
it's not about religion. It's about like us as being also spiritual as people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, look, it's fascinating for me over the last, I think, 20 to 30 years, seeing a recognition in the psychology world of the spiritual side of life, and recognizing that we actually need to tend to that spirituality if we're going to be healthy. In the framework, I use the language of spirituality or meaning because I recognize that not everyone resonates with the language of spirituality, and for me that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
It really is to do with, and this is a big word, but the word that this is all around is hegemonic, and hegemonic is actually about living outside of ourselves or living for something that's bigger than us.
Than us, yes.
Um, some people, and this Cormac Russell calls it the good life,
Yes.
and that's a phrase that was picked up and is meaningful in the UK.
Yes.
Um, and others will call it other things. You know, for me, ultimately, it's how we move towards flourishing. But the spiritual side of that, or the meaning side of that, becomes so important because it shifts the focus. Absolutely shifts the focus from being introspective. Because look, there's a balancing act in all of this, as there is with everything. Some religions will teach us that we're to put ourselves last, or some, teachers in some religions will teach us that we're to put ourselves last. And look, to be honest, that's the way that I lived for a long, long time. And because of doing that and living in that way, it led to multiple burnout experiences
Yes.
for me.
It's
And,
not
being left,
sustainable.
it's
It's
not sustainable,
yeah.
and being left actually with anxiety, depression, and OCD, these things. And I talk about
Yeah.
this in the book.
Yeah.
And part of that has been this, this thing, you put yourself last, you serve, you serve, you serve. Even when
Mm.
there's nothing left, you serve some more. And for me, that's been an incredibly dangerous approach to spirituality.
Yeah, because the result is disastrous. So,
It is. It is.
what comes to mind right now is that it is impossible to love other people if you are not loving yourself, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you
And
can't
I
give from an
think,
empty bucket, it's just
no, no.
impossible. Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's been really helpful for me, like I've been a regular patient with a psychologist now for, coming up on 3 years, and it's
mm,
been really helpful to unlearn some of those negative, unhelpful, what we called at the time truths,
mm,
to unlearn those things and to realize exactly what you're saying, that it's actually okay to love ourselves. And from
yeah,
that point, from that place of peace,
yes,
we can actually love others. It was really interesting. It's just a quick thing on Facebook, but of course, many of us know and love Brene Brown, and the way
Yes.
that Brene writes and her openness and vulnerability is
Yes.
something to aspire to, actually, and
Absolutely.
I want to do that in my writing.
Yeah.
And to me that just sort of put it in perspective and thinking, wow, this element of flourishing is actually really important to us, and it goes beyond, again, it goes beyond religiosity to our
Mm,
common humanity.
mm.
That we are built with a sense of needing to look for meaning, needing to have that created, of spirituality. I equate those things, and that we explore those in the quiet moments, in the slowness,
Yes.
and through nature, through our relationships, through our connections. And it's not about um, serving someone, going hell for leather, letting them, transverse your boundaries, and all of those sorts of things.
Mm. All
That
of that
that's actually not
unhealthy
true
stuff
spirituality. I mean,
that
it's
is
all
not,
unhealthy.
it's not true spirituality.
It's
And
it's not true spirituality.
yeah,
No.
and actually expecting that of people is it yeah, I find that toxic and quite abusive.
Yeah, yeah.
To
I talk a
yeah.
little bit in the book about my family's time in the cult, actually.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exciting.
yeah, and
Yes.
and that's what we're talking about here
Yeah.
is the extreme of these things where you're expected to give, 110, 120%. Even if that's not the words that are spoken, there's a lifestyle that comes with that
There's
that
that
says if you're truly
underlying pressure.
committed,
It's that
yeah, if you want to be
underlying pressure.
accepted, if you want to,
Yes.
be part of us, then this is the way that you've got to be, and that sets some unhealthy patterns, both for me and for my partners when it came to spirituality and that sort of thing, and
Yes.
so that was where some of that came from. Mm.
Yes. 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 You know what is really astonishing for me about the book, right? And it's this start where you are, right?
Mm.
It's not you don't need a spectacular program. It can be
Mm.
something as simple as a dance, as food, as a get together,
Yeah,
as a, you know,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
and very often when we sort of think, and here's the thing is that people don't get involved because they often think like, I don't have the resources for massive programs.
Mm.
I don't have something, but we all have something in our hands, right? Whether you
Absolutely,
have a job or
absolutely.
not, you always have something in your hand. And that is
Yeah,
whether
yeah,
it's turning on a speaker and getting people to dance.
yeah,
You know, you
yeah.
have something in your hand. So I'm going to
I
leave
mean,
that
so
with you.
we were honored, Amy and I, when we met Steve, and Steve was a guy who came into our op shop that we were running down in Pakenham, and we had a room set up at the back, lounges and a kitchen and all that sort of stuff, and we used to just put on lunch as an excuse to, kind of meet people, build relationships, create a sense of belonging, those sorts of things, and Steve came along, and when Steve first came, he was. Like he was really disheveled. He'd been in and out of prison. His skin was yellow. He was sleeping rough, and this sort of stuff. And he just needed, a place to come. And so he started coming, and his dogs came, and we got to know him and spend some time with him. We even in our community were able to house him, which was fantastic. And
Wow.
so coming out of that over a period of time. And it was never simple for Steve. I mean, he died of alcohol poisoning in the end.
Oh,
But on the way through, what we saw was this amazingly gentle-hearted man who really just wanted to help others.
mhm.
And really, what happened in the end was we offered him something to do in the op shop because we wanted him to be able to. Well, this was the thing. He came to us and said, "You guys have given us so much. You've given me so much, right? I want to give something back." And at that point, we could have said, "Oh, no, 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 no. You don't need to give anything back. We just did it out of our hearts and out of the love." But something in me, I didn't have all these words and hadn't done all this work at this point, but something in me knew that wasn't right. and
Mm.
that actually there was some kind of dignity in being able to give something back,
Yes.
right? And that's one of the things we lose in these welfare approaches is this dignity. And so he said, sure, like there's always stuff to do in the shop. Come and do some stuff in the shop. It wasn't the perfect fit. But what we saw happen was that Steve would then, because he got some confidence and believed in himself,
Mm.
he would actually go into our community, which was a new community, like new houses being built and that sort of thing. And he was brought up on the farm, so he would actually help people create their gardens, right? So he would
Oh,
go
wow.
and build their retaining wall, dig their gardens, mow their lawn, all for nothing because he just wanted to give something. And so I'd go for a walk on a Saturday morning, and I'd hear this, oh, hey, Andre, and it was Steve helping out in someone's garden,
That
and
is
biggest smile on his
absolutely
face.
what a phenomenal story. I absolutely. So, here it is, right? So it's not about rescuing people. It's about recognizing what is already there. It's it's
Absolutely,
it's not
absolutely.
an approach of what is wrong with a place. It is,
Yeah, yeah,
what does this place have? What is here? What is the life that is already here? And every
absolutely.
single one of those small things matter,
Yeah,
and they
absolutely,
form part of a
absolutely.
bigger story that leads to flourishing if we would just
I
stop and actually look at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got to tell you this story because I absolutely love it, right?
Yeah.
It was during the lockdowns. And for those that don't know, where I was in Melbourne at the time of the lockdown, and we had the longest lockdowns in the world in Melbourne. Thank you, Premier Dan Andrews.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of us are still sort of scratching our heads and sort of think, what was that
Yeah.
about? Like,
What
why
was
why
that?
so long? And what was
Mm.
that? Anyway, so this is the situation that we're in, and I'm on Zoom calls all over the world, right? I'm talking all hours of the day and night, working with people that are trying to work out what does COVID mean in the informal settlements.
Yeah.
What does it mean in this particular health setting in Kenya and these sorts of things. So I'm doing this, and then I'm involved in them in Australia as well. I'm sitting on these groups with these welfare agencies, asking the question of what does it mean now that these towers are in lockdown, and what does that mean for the people, and how do they
Oh,
survive
man, that was
when
horrific.
people there are from the Sudan, right, and
Yeah.
Ethiopia, and it's all about community and hanging out and all of that sort of thing. And so we were like, what's going on? Like, how is this going to work? And we heard the story of one group of families who were living in the high-rise towers in the flats in Fitzroy, next
Yeah.
door to where I was living actually. And they said, look, how? They said we're in our house, each other's houses all day, every day. That's what we do. We cook together, and this sort of thing. So, well, how are you surviving during Zoom? And the person we're talking to said, "Oh, sorry, how are you during COVID?" And the answer was, "We run Zoom, and we actually put the music on, we put the Zoom on, and we dance in each other's kitchens, over Zoom, and
Oh,
we sing
wow.
songs, and we cook together, and we do it all over Zoom because we can't be face to face because we're protecting each other and we're in lockdown." But
Wow.
that community was so important that they just found a way to do it and to connect with each other. And for me, like that was such a lesson for, us sort of Westerners, white folk who just sort of sitting in their houses thinking, how are we going to, kind of survive? Where we've got people from the Sudan next door just having a dance party with each other over Zoom. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, of course, that's how it works.
It reminds me of the Zoom dinner parties we used to organize, and it part of it was the drive to actually support the local restaurants who were only allowed
Mm,
to do
mm,
takeaways.
yeah,
And wherever we were ordering from our local guys.
yeah,
I was not in Melbourne at the time. I was in regional Victoria.
mm, mm,
And those guys desperately needed, because they were used to the business driving through from Melbourne, and
yeah,
it became such a massive thing to actually support our local guys, and having these three course sort of takeaway meals from
yeah,
the local
of course.
food suppliers, that you
Yep.
know was part of giving back to the community and keeping businesses open.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and
exactly.
so this book is so so hopeful, and what I love about this book, that it's not a fluffy hopeful. It is this practical hopeful, practical steps, practical insights. There's a lot of systems that you make so plain, and that's so plainly explained in this book. And I really would like to encourage everyone, whether you are in community development or not, whether you a policymaker, whether you are just living in a community, get the book. Because this book is really, really, I believe that this work is a work for our time, and of our time. I really, 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 really hope to see a movement sort of burst out of this moment, that we look back in a year from now and go, wow, didn't realize this book was going to change so much. So I'm actually just gonna ask you, how does it feel to be sort of days away from seeing this for go to public consumption?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's really exciting. I mean, it's been such a journey. Yeah, really a decade in the making. I'm hoping the next book doesn't take another 10 years.
I will
But
absolutely, I will absolutely force you to not take it at 10 years. I promise you.
excellent, excellent. I need that. I need that. No, no. More to come. But look, I am really excited to get it out there for public consumption. There was always the sort of the choice, like when I was writing my PhD, as anyone who's done a PhD, kind of knows, you get to these points and you think, man, why am I doing this? I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to throw it away, and this is rubbish. It's killing me, kind of stuff. But I'm so glad that I had the encouragement from family and friends and colleagues to kind of keep going and to see it through. And we had the amazing support of the guys that I'd connected with all over the world who really wanted to see the outcomes, and they were living the story with they were the ones that were teaching me. I was living the
Yes,
stories from
yes,
them really.
yes.
And so it's really the culmination of all of that. So it is deeply satisfying. It is
Yeah.
deeply satisfying to get that out into the world.
Yeah, I must say I'm pretty honored, mate, to actually have been on part of this journey with you.
Yeah, yeah,
We started, I think we met just post-COVID, pre-COVID.
yeah, or
Oh no,
maybe pre. No,
2019.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I think
So it was
so. Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
just before the entire chaos
yeah.
sort of was let loose on us, and
That's right. Yeah,
it
yeah,
was it was interesting to like walk this road with you, and it is
mm,
interesting to be on this journey with you. Um,
yeah,
I I want to see this from Africa to America to Canada to please in the West, wake up.
mm,
And
mm.
I almost want to stand in front of every parliament, the White House, and go, read this darn book, you need it, right? Because there's been so many bad policies that
Mm, mm,
particularly, I mean, we know how America, for instance, was turned into
mm, mm,
a state, a prison state, really, where
mm, mm.
prisons became the catchment area for anyone who had
Yes.
difficulties, because
Yeah.
all the funding was taken away from community services. So
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that is we got to do better. We absolutely have to do better. I must just say that um, I'm really excited about this. From the first moment that you and I met in the
Mm,
CBDC days,
hmm.
to where we are now, who would have thought, mate?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It's
Yeah.
been a
Yeah.
journey. I look forward to where this book is going to land. I
Mm.
must say that this has been a phenomenal journey. I want to thank you, Andre. I want to thank you for, just the journey together.
Mm.
And I want to thank you for doing this book, for the blood, sweat, and tears it took to
Mm.
get this across the line. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
this
thank
has
you.
been
Mm.
an honor. So we're going to sign off, and I want to say thank you
Mhm.
to everyone who's joined us. I am super excited. We will be live and up and running again on Monday, Australian time. So when everybody opens their eyes, they will be able to purchase this book live from thenarrativefactor.com and from www.andreve.com. And if you'd like a link sent directly with the book, contact us on word@tnfpublishing.com. Love everyone.
Excellent. Thank you.